Is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back at the hometown commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, a show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest out brew a Magic world. Last week we covered all of the Fallout precons with their face commanders. If you're interested in seeing those, go ahead and check those out on the channel. We got just a couple more commanders from Fallout this week. And then we're going to head into doing some random stuff and taking some requests and all that good stuff. But today we're talking about Mr. House, President CO, a 3-mana 0/4 human artifact creature. It says whenever we roll a 4 or higher, we create a 3/3 colorless robot artifact creature token. If it's a 6 or higher, instead we create that token and a treasure. And for 4 and a tap, we can roll a 6-sided die plus an additional die for each mana from treasures spent to activate this ability. So a Mardu commander that cares about dice. And I think there's a lot of way we can approach this, but I think the most profitable way to approach Mr. House is going to be probably caring about treasures, which is what the deck is going to do a little bit. We want to get those artifact creature tokens out of rolling the dice, and of course use them in combat, or use them for damage when they come in or leave the battlefield or what have you. But in all reality, we want to try to fund rolling the dice with Mr. House with treasures. Now, there's plenty of other cards in the deck, right, that roll dice as well, but I think the most reliable way that we can rely on rolling a dice is going to be with Mr. House. And if we can do this every turn, or we can fund this as much as possible, I think we're going to get the most value. For instance, in the deck list, it's going to be down in the description below. Well, let's talk about rolling dice, because I think this is the important part. We have a couple cards that work really well for this. Vexing Puzzle Box says whenever we roll 1 or more dice, we put that number of charge counters on it. We can add a mana of any color to it and roll a d20. That rolling a d20 is going to be really helpful, because we should more often than not get that artifact and that treasure out of it, and we can remove 100 counters from it to search for an artifact and put it on the battlefield, which can be helpful depending on what we're trying to do. And again, if we're getting higher rolls on those d20s and we're rolling a lot of dice, I think Puzzle Box is going to be a good way for us to do that. Wand of Wonder is kind of a fun card, allowing us to cast our opponent's things and use them to our benefit. Again, we're rolling a d20, so higher result, we should more often than not be able to fulfill Mr. House's ability. And then Will says anytime we roll 1 or more dice, we roll that many dice plus 1 and ignore the lowest roll. This is just going to allow us to more often hit as high on the rolls as possible, and we'll grow Will as we roll more and more dice. We have Ebony Fly, kind of interesting card. It comes in tapped and taps for colorless. For 4, we can roll a d6. And it becomes an XX, where X is the result. It's a creature, and then whenever it attacks, another attacking creature gains flying till it turns. It's kind of an interesting card. Can turn into a flyer every turn and get us another ability to roll a d6 to give us some value. Component Pouch works as a mana rock in the deck, allowing us to add 2 mana colors as long as we take a component counter off of it. But each turn, we're basically going to roll to put component counters on it, and we can put them 2 at a turn with getting a 10 through 20. But again, another big way to get a big dice roll for Mr. House. And then Barbarian class, same kind of that ability as Will, roll 1 or more dice, and do 1 more and then ignore the lowest roll. When we load level 2, whenever we roll 1 or more dice, target creature gets +2/+0 and menace till end of turn. That can turn some of our other creatures that maybe we can buff up into being prepared to deal with. And level 3 will give everything a haste if that's something that we care about for some of these artifact creatures in delivering a better game plan that way. But I think, as always, like I said in the beginning, I think the easiest way to take this deck is to get into treasures. I think that this deck is going to take a lot of inspiration off of something like Jan Jansen, a Mardu commander that cares a lot about treasures and sacrificing artifacts. So we can kind of take a little bit of inspiration from that, but we get to bring in some of our big cornerstone cards here, and things like Goldspan Dragon and Grim Hireling, these creatures that are going to make us hopefully lots of treasures. And the cool thing about Goldspan is that with its ability, it's allowing our treasures to stack for 2 mana. And if we go back and look at Mr. House, it says additional 6-sided die for each mana from treasures, meaning that this double mana is actually going to get us 2 dice for just the cost of 1 treasure. I think making Goldspan one of the best cards in our deck. It's also just a house of actual value. Pitiless Plunder, anytime another creature we control dies, we make a treasure. Great card in its own right, and that comes in the deck that this comes in. And then Unexpected Windfall and Big Score for some draw that also tack on treasures can be really important as we're getting through our deck to try to find the cards we're looking for and get what we need. But it's not just about making the tokens. We want to damage our opponents for them. We have things like Reckless Fireweaver and Ingenious Artillerist that are going to deal damage whenever artifacts come in. This is beneficial because both are the artifact creature tokens we make off of Mr. House and the treasures are going to deal damage to our opponents. And then same thing with Mirkwood Bats. Whenever we create a sacrifice token, each opponent loses a life. This fits, again, very well with the treasures because we have to sacrifice them for their mana. Again, making sure their opponents are losing life that way. For this reason, I think Mr. House is kind of fun. It's kind of an interesting way to play a treasure deck that isn't solved or people really expect it. I think it's kind of a new spin on a treasure deck that some people won't expect, but I think will still look like a treasure deck. But there are cards that can untap Mr. House. And the cool part is actually that Mr. House is an artifact creature. So things like Unwinding Clock will actually untap him every turn, which can be helpful if we have enough treasure or mana to keep bankrolling him. We can do it every turn. Thousand Year Elixir and Patriarch's Seal will actually both allow us to untap it as well and potentially do it more than once in a turn. Patriarchal Seal has that nice benefit of also being a mana rock at the same time, giving it a dual threat. Thousand Year Elixir effectively giving creatures haste for the purpose of using activated abilities, which isn't a bad idea either, especially for something like Mr. House that needs to tap in order to use its ability. There's a couple cards I wanted to mention here that just really didn't fit under any of those headings, but I think they're really important. Marionette Master is a way for us to potentially win the game, being something like Mirkwood, where whenever an artifact we control is put into our graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. This is a well-loved card in treasure decks and other artifact finishing decks to deal damage to our opponents when we're using these things. Same thing with Naughty Ears Nightblade. Whenever a token leaves the battlefield under our control, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. Again, sacking the treasures, doing all that. This is the kind of card that's going to continually damage our opponent. Cranial Plating is a fun option. To give a creature +1/+0 for each artifact we control. We can actually attach it at instant speed. This can be used if we get a flyer or give something menace or unblockability. We can cheekily get this on and deal with some massive damage to our opponents. Nettle Cyst has a very similar ability to Cranial Plating. +1/+1 for each artifact enchantment we control, but obviously only in equip it sorcery speed. But we get a creature with it, or we can just put this to a creature we want. Agent of the Iron Throne is probably one of my favorite cards for these type of decks. Very similar ability to that Naughty Ears Nightblade or the Mirkwood Bats. Whenever an artifact or creature we control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, your opponent loses a life. So again, as our tokens die, as we get rid of our treasures, people are getting damaged. And of course, Mr. House has to be on the battlefield for this one, so it could be slightly worse than maybe the other effects, but I still think it's really important for the deck. And then Maddening Hex is just a really fun card. Whenever an enchanted player casts a non-creature spell, they roll a d6, deals that much damage to that player, and then we attach it to one of our opponents at random. This is going to get us just some extra rolls at random times and making sure, hopefully, that we can get some tokens outside of just tapping Mr. House or using other abilities. There's a lot more in the deck, a lot more that I wanted to show up, but I thought those are the highlights to mention. But as always, I always talk about how Nose Deck, even on version 1.0, is ever complete. There's always cards that we can add, and the card on the left here that I'm going to talk about is a card that I didn't add just simply due to its price, and that's Ancient Copper Dragon. The card is still very expensive, sitting at $60 to $70, if not more at the moment, and can be a lot for some people. I think you can run the deck without it, but it's a very good creature if you can have it. Ancient Gold Dragon in the middle is kind of interesting. Again, another way to get a D20 and get a bunch of creatures in the same right. And then Reckless Endeavor. Roll 2 D12 and choose one damage equal to that result to each creature, and the other one you get treasure tokens. Again, just some other ways to roll dice, but I don't think for two of these, the Endeavor and the Gold Dragon, I don't think it fits completely. For Copper Dragon, I think it fully goes completely. It's a flyer. It's going to be hard for your opponents to deal with. We just need to find a way to protect it. But again, the price tag can throw some people off. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to some people. But let's get into our Goldfish. Keeping a 3-lander with an Arcane Signet ain't never bad. We got that Ebony Fly, Nettle Cyst, and the Thousand Moon Smithy. A card that makes artifact creature tokens power toughness equal to the number of artifacts or creatures we control. So they can get really big. Not a bad hand. It does allow us to get Mr. House out on the 3 if we really want to, drawing a Delina, which is a really great card in its own right, rolling D20s and getting us copies of creatures. I think we're going to have to put the Nomad Outpost down here tapped, either it or the Draw Sports Bridge. This is going to be kind of awkward because we're probably only going to have access to 3 mana on turn 3 if we have to play this tap land. We get Dance Macabre. Each player sacrifices a non-token creature, and then we roll a d20 and add the toughness of a creature you sacrifice this way, and we can bring things back to our graveyard that our opponents sacrifice, which is pretty cool. But I think we get the Swamp down here, get that Arcane Sanctum down. This is going to allow us to get down... I would think we get down Mr. House this turn, but I guess there could be arguments for otherwise. We get the Draw Sports Bridge in tapped, so we're going to have 3 mana. No matter what. We could Nettle Cyst and get that on the board before getting down Mr. House next turn. We could get Mr. House down next turn. There's just nothing really for us to do quite yet. I think for the purposes here, we'll just get Mr. House down and see how it works. This turn, no land, but that's okay. I think Wand of Wonder could be interesting, although we can't really use it right away, right? Its ability would be something we use later. Thousand Moon Smithy could be an option, getting some creatures on board to help protect us. Delina could be an option for next turn to start making copies of Mr. House that are attacking, and just get extra dice rolls for its ability. I think that's what I'd probably do here, because thankfully it's just when she attacks, not when the creature you want to copy attacks, so we can keep Mr. House safe. But I think this is the best play right here, and it sets up for an okay next turn. We see a Talisman here. Thankfully, we don't have to pay anything for Delina to attack or roll those dice. It's just on attack. I like the idea of Nettle Cyst here. I like the idea of Thousand Moon Smithy here. I like the idea of Wand of Wonder. I think I would play this Talisman just to get us a little bit extra ramp, because we definitely don't want to be waiting forever. And I think I would just put the Nettle Cyst down here. Get another creature out there that's going to get buffed up. And we can always put this on Mr. House later if we want to start pushing it for damage. But being on turn 3 here, turn 4, I think we probably should have a safe place to put Delina where it's not going to get in too much trouble. And then roll a d20. Now the cool part here is 4 higher tokens, 6 or higher treasure. So as long as we're rolling a 4 or higher, we're getting an artifact. As long as we're rolling a 6 or higher, we're getting a treasure. And Delina can make us a bunch of copies. The goal here is just to roll a 4 or higher and start profiting. Again, the copies of Mr. House are probably going to die in combat. And if they don't, we just exile them at the end of combat. No worries, no harm, no foul. We're just trying to roll those dice and get the process started. Drawing for the next turn, we see Big Score, a card that would be pretty darn good here. Would allow us to play it, maybe a 3-land card if we wanted to. Now, let's say, for example, we rolled something and had a treasure. Let's just say we did that. We got at least one roll that gave us a treasure. Again, 14 out of 20 results would give us a treasure. So I think it's worth assuming that it's a possibility. So let's say we have 6 mana, technically. I don't mind the idea of big scoring to kind of get some fresh stuff into our hand, getting a couple more treasures, and seeing what that does for us. We could also do something like Smithy. But let's try to do the big score. I think I would pitch the reversal. Draw 2, and we get the 2 treasures. So let's say we used our 2 treasures in these 2, so we're up to 2 more treasures and 3 extra. Dispatch is a great card right now, effectively exiling a creature. Fireweaver would be really good to play as well right now, so that way we can start damaging people with it. That's probably what I would do with my 2 of my last 3 mana. And again, swing Delina and this creature in. Delina would go ahead and choose Mr. House again, since as an artifact it'll count for Fireweaver. And again, we just hope we roll halfway well. We're leaving the mana up for Dispatch just in case something happens there. And if let's say we make another treasure because we got at least 1 roll. Again, I think it's safe to assume that 1 damage to each opponent. We see how this combat goes. This germ's pretty big. I mean, it's what, 2 the 2 treasures from Big Score, right? So that's 3, 4, 5. We got at least 6 artifacts right now. So this is a 6/6. Not going to be a bad attack on someone. And I think we just try to find a way to get enough treasures to feed into Mr. House, right? If we wanted to go that route. This turn we'd have, let's say we got a treasure off of Delina, 3 or 5. Let's say we have 8 mana. Let's see what we can do with. We got Wand of Wonder. We got Dance Macabre. If the battlefield's starting to get a little fancy here, we could Dance Macabre this turn. sack the Germ, and because it's going to give us a plus 6 or 7 or 8 right now, meaning we should be able to hit that 15 plus and get our opponent's things. If that's not the play, I think I would probably Smithy here. We have 4 mana left, put it into the house and roll the dice, see if we can get some tokens, deal some damage here. Smithy's token comes in and gets pretty good. Take another attack, do the Delina, and, and just keep going on this route until we can keep making more treasures, funding them into Mr. House to keep going again and again, and just, dealing damage as they come in, threatening people in combat. And I think you can kind of see where the natural paces of the deck are going to go. But let me know, what do you think of Mr. House down in the comment section below. A lot of fun cards in the deck. It's a treasure deck at the end of the day, but I also think it plays a lot of really fun things that I've never had the chance to put in a deck, like Celebrate 8000 or Comet Stellar Pop, things that just roll dice that help you with getting those things every turn. But I'd love to hear what you think, and I will catch you guys next time.